Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we have a fascinating and honestly incredibly intense stack of source material to get through.
We really do.
Yeah. We're looking at excerpts from a text called Live Your Life as a Man. It's written by a South African writer, blogger, and teacher named Mohammed Yassine de Bruyns.
Who also goes by Coach de Bruyns online.
Right, Coach de Bruyns. And the premise of this text is built around a concept you've likely heard echoed online before. Basically the idea that Western society is facing this profound crisis of masculinity.
Before we go any further, I do need to set a very clear framework for our discussion today.
Oh, absolutely.
This text touches on highly charged, very controversial topics regarding gender roles, feminism, and societal structure. Our mission today isn't to take a side, agree, or disagree with any of it. We're here strictly to unpack the author's arguments impartially. We want to help you understand the core ideas driving this specific traditionalist worldview that is absolutely gaining traction in certain corners of the internet.
Exactly.
We are acting entirely as your objective anthropological guides to this material. Nothing more.
I think that's a crucial distinction to make right at the top. We were just holding up a mirror to the text. And the author's core thesis is that modern men are essentially dropping out of society because they're being handed a broken, conflicting rule book.
Yeah, that's his main argument.
But what's interesting is that he doesn't align with modern internet counter-movements. Like, he explicitly rejects things like MGTOW, men going their own way. Can you explain briefly why he dismisses those movements?
Yes. According to the Bruyns, movements where men just withdraw from society or withdraw from women, he views them as inherently hedonistic, broken, and ultimately depressing.
So he doesn't want them to just quit.
Not at all. He doesn't want men to retreat. Instead, he proposes a radical return to strict, biologically driven traditionalism. He argues that the only viable way forward is to fully embrace what he sees as millions of years of evolutionary hardwiring.
Right.
And he doesn't ease the reader into this concept. He confronts it immediately by examining how society defines men in relation to women, arguing that modern times still judge men by their biological usefulness in a crisis.
Okay, let's unpack this, because he uses a really vivid historical example to make his point here. He brings up the sinking of the Titanic in 1912.
He does.
How exactly does he connect a shipwreck to modern biological determinism?
In his worldview, the Titanic perfectly illustrates raw evolutionary instinct. When there weren't enough lifeboats, the men overwhelmingly gave up their spots for the women and children.
Right, women and children first.
Exactly. But de Bruyns argues this wasn't just Victorian chivalry or, social etiquette. He claims that biologically speaking, men are essentially cannon fodder in times of crisis.
Cannon fodder, that's a heavy term.
It is. His logic is mathematical. Because one man can father hundreds of children. But a woman's reproductive capacity is strictly limited. Protecting women at the expense of men is mathematically necessary for the survival of the human species.
So he's saying that this self-sacrifice isn't a learned behavior at all. It's practically coded into male DNA.
Yes.
But how does that tie into the crisis he claims modern men are facing today?
Well, he uses that stark Titanic analogy to highlight what he sees as the ultimate contradiction of modern society, or what is often called postmodernity.
Let's translate postmodernity for a second. In the context of his book, he basically means a modern society where we've largely decided that gender roles are just social constructs we made up, rather than hardwired biological truths, right?
Exactly. In a postmodern framework, we try to dismantle traditional gender expectations. But de Bruyns argues that society unfairly asks men to suppress millions of years of evolutionary instincts.
Which instincts specifically?
Specifically, the innate desire to protect, to claim ownership, and to aggressively compete. He writes that men are constantly told not to view women through a biological lens, not to be overly protective because it restricts a woman's autonomy.
Right, to abandon patriarchal norms.
Right. Yet, he points out, the second the metaphorical ship starts sinking, the second there's a war, a home invasion, or a crisis society instantly reverts. It expects men to give up the lifeboats and act like traditional protectors.
I want you to just imagine for a second how jarring that would be. Walking through life feeling that your innate biological wiring is constantly, aggressively at odds with the rules of the society you live in.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
That is the exact friction de Bruyns claims modern men are experiencing. He says men are being asked to have no integrity, to break apart their very being in times of peace, but be willing to die for society in times of war.
Which leads directly into his views on order, danger, and hierarchy.
Right.
If men are biologically wired to be the protectors and the cannon fodder, he asserts they are naturally the primary agents of both danger and order in any society. According to his framework, the traits that make a man capable and useful are the exact same traits that can make him incredibly dangerous if left unchecked.
Okay, so he's making a massive claim that men are the ultimate agents of order. Does he actually back that up with anything from his own life, or is it purely theoretical?
He actually backs it up with a really gripping anecdote from his childhood. The author grew up in Mitchell's Plain.
That's in Cape Town, South Africa, right?
Yes, it's known as a very tough, gang-plagued area. And he describes hanging out on the street as a kid and watching a car suddenly burst into flames.
Oh, wow.
The street was full of tough guys, gangsters filled with bravado. But when the fire started, they all just stood there in a panic, doing absolutely nothing.
So all the bravado vanished the second there was real chaos.
Precisely. Then an ordinary guy, not a gangster, just a regular man minding his own business, ran up with a massive bucket of sand and calmly, methodically put the fire out.
Just took care of it.
Right. For the author, this ordinary man embodied the pinnacle of masculinity: decisive, brave, prudent, and calm under pressure. He uses this specific memory to argue that society only functions, and chaos is only kept at bay, because good men actively impose order on it.
And he takes this idea of men imposing order and applies it to something much bigger, the global economy, specifically the massive cultural and labor shifts of the 1960s.
What's fascinating here is how he connects this biological drive to impose order directly to human mate selection.
This is a wild connection.
It is. He argues that when society pushed for women to enter the workforce en masse in the 1960s, it didn't just change office dynamics. In his view, it fundamentally broke the way humans pair up.
Wait, how does women getting jobs break mate selection? That sounds like a massive leap.
He views it through a strictly economic and evolutionary lens. First, the economics. He claims that doubling the labor pool by adding women inherently reduced the overall price of labor.
Okay, supply and demand.
Exactly. Making it mathematically harder for a single male breadwinner to support a family on one income. But the deeper issue, according to his text, is psychological. He argues that men are hardwired to compete with other men in social hierarchies, not with women.
So throwing women into that exact same competitive hierarchy scrambles the biological script.
In his worldview, yes. And crucially, he asserts that women are biologically wired with a trait called hypergamy.
Hypergamy.
Right. Meaning they instinctively seek men of equal or higher social and financial status to lead and protect them. So when women become highly successful and financially independent, he argues they inherently shrink their own pool of eligible partners because they biologically do not want a man beneath their status.
Think about your own career or the dating pool if you're single. Bruyns is basically saying that the more successful a woman becomes, the smaller her dating pool gets, which is why he claims so many independent women allegedly find themselves deeply lonely.
That's his argument, yes.
And on the flip side, lower status men look at a playing field where they have to compete for jobs against women who they biologically view as mates, not competitors. And these men just get overwhelmed and choose to opt out of society altogether.
That is the exact dynamic he claims is ruining modern relationships. So his practical career advice to young men listening to his teachings is incredibly blunt.
What does he tell them to do?
He tells them, do not withdraw. Get into the competition. He advises working 60 to 70 hours a week without complaint. To avoid competing directly with women, he suggests entering heavy male-dominated trades.
Like plumbing, electrical work, that sort of thing?
Yeah, or the hard STEM fields.
Yeah.
And most notably, he tells young men to fully embrace the loneliness of building a career. Skip the partying, skip the casual dating, hit the gym, and just build yourself up so you can eventually provide for a family as the sole breadwinner.
And that intense focus bleeds into every single aspect of the lifestyle he prescribes. It's not just about getting a job. It's an entire environment of high testosterone.
Oh, absolutely.
But what really stood out to me is how strict his daily rules are. I mean, he emphasizes physical resilience above almost everything else. What does this actually look like day to day for someone following his advice?
It's incredibly rigid. He talks extensively about his own past in full contact karate and Muay Thai, emphasizing the absolute need for a man to taste blood, to get hit, and to know how to throw a punch.
He really leans into the physical danger aspect.
He asserts every man needs to go through a dangerous phase to test their physical limits, and the diet he mandates to support this is non-negotiable. According to him, you have to eat red meat.
Just red meat.
Well, he completely dismisses veganism, calling them diets for rabbits. He advises avoiding alcohol, pork, and sugar almost entirely to maintain maximum testosterone and libido. And if you're over 35, heavyweight training is absolutely mandatory to stop your body from deteriorating.
So his diet isn't just about health or aesthetics, it's practically a biological weapon. He's trying to maintain the exact testosterone levels he believes are required to impose order on a chaotic world.
Yes.
But there is a massive paradox in his philosophy here. He's championing this rugged, high-testosterone, aggressive lifestyle, but at the exact same time, he demands extreme, almost monastic discipline over that very same testosterone.
That is the central tension of his worldview. He argues that a man must cultivate immense power, but have total, unwavering control over his sexual energy. He strictly forbids watching pornography, engaging in casual sex, and even looking at women on the street.
Hold on, not even looking at women on the street, that seems practically impossible.
He takes it that far because he genuinely believes that looking at other women sows a subconscious seed of desire that will eventually make your own partner seem inadequate.
Wow.
He views casual sex as part of a feminine energy that actually castrates a man's true power. By giving away your attention and energy to women who aren't yours, he claims you are devaluing yourself and destroying your focus. He argues that casual sex ruins a person's ability to pair bond properly.
And the strictness applies to how men should approach intimacy in general, right? He seems to hate the idea of smooth talking or seduction.
He absolutely does. He believes relying on physical seduction or coercion is fundamentally unmanly because it bypasses a woman's logic and relies purely on manipulating her temporary emotional state.
Here's where it gets really interesting. He takes this idea of bypassing emotion so far that he actually suggests a deeply legalistic approach to intimacy. I was blown away by this part of the text.
It's definitely one of the more unique points.
He writes that a man shouldn't rely on physical seduction, but should ideally secure verbal consent. And even better, written consent, witnessed by two people before sleeping with a woman.
Yes, the text actually advocates for formalized consent.
Wait, like literally signing a contract before being intimate. That is incredibly unusual.
It is highly unusual, but in his logic, it makes perfect sense. He argues this gives the woman a chance to think about the act deeply and make a decision based on pure logic, rather than the heat of the moment in his embrace. It removes the messy, emotional ambiguity that he believes plagues modern dating. If we connect this to the bigger picture of his worldview, this absolute rejection of emotion-driven casual sex is the foundation of his views on marriage and family. He asserts that women, due to their biology, cannot separate sex from emotion the way men can.
So what does that mean for relationships?
Therefore, he claims, a woman who has had multiple partners is emotionally fractured. According to his theory, she retains primordial emotional connections to her past partners, meaning she can never fully commit to a new husband.
Which leads directly to his incredibly strict criteria for an ideal wife. He lists 8 definitive rules.
Yes, very specific rules.
He states that a man should ideally marry a virgin because she will never compare him to anyone else. The ideal wife must be submissive, prioritize building a family over her own private career, and be completely willing to take on all household duties.
And there's one about her family background, too.
Right. She also needs to have a good relationship with her father because, in his view, that proves she respects male authority.
And perhaps one of his strictest, most uncompromising rules is his absolute ban on married women having male friends. He views cross-sex friendships as an utter disaster for a marriage.
Completely off limits.
Yes. He argues that women inherently crave male attention because it makes them feel validated and needed. If a woman is getting attention from a male friend at work who has 8 hours a day to casually chat with her, she will inevitably compare him to her husband.
I want you to think about your own office environment right now. Think about the casual chats you have by the coffee machine or on your messaging apps with your coworkers. According to Bruyns, that seemingly innocent banter is actively destroying marriages.
That's exactly how he frames it.
He argues that the husband, who is exhausted from working 70 hours a week to provide for the family, will always come up short in that comparison because he doesn't have the energy to be the fun, flattering guy. He claims this inevitably leads to resentment and infidelity.
So his rule is simple. No male friends for the wife. And to be fair to his logic, he says married men shouldn't have female friends either. Keep the boundaries absolute.
However, this is where we hit another major controversy in the text. While he enforces strict boundaries on friendships and absolute fidelity from his wives, he has a highly unapologetic defense of polygyny, the practice of a single man having multiple wives.
Yes, he does.
The author himself states he has 10 children and multiple wives, and he defends this not as a betrayal of the family structure, but as an actual enhancement of the man's value within it.
That's correct.
Wait, how does he possibly justify demanding a wife who has never been with anyone else and who can't even have male friends while he himself has multiple wives?
He anchors his justification entirely in biological determinism. He argues that a man's value in the eyes of a woman actually increases when she knows he is desired by other women.
So it's about status.
Exactly.
Ew.
He claims it speaks to the feminine ego to know she has secured a man that a million other women would want. For a highly successful, high-value man to commit to true monogamy, the author argues, is a massive sacrifice of his biological imperative to mate widely.
He actually uses this wild analogy in the text. He says a key that opens all locks is a master key, but a lock that can be opened by any key is a broken lock.
I remember that line.
That really tells you everything you need to know about how rigidly he views the biological differences between men and women.
It does. He says a man should never close himself off to the possibility of having other women, even if he chooses to be monogamous, because maintaining that potential keeps him attractive to his wife. And this brings us to the ultimate purpose of all this structure, all this discipline, and all this provision: fatherhood.
Right, building the family.
He states very plainly that a man is just a kid until he has a kid. It's the immense weight of responsibility that forces a man to truly grow up. And his approach to parenting is heavily gendered, completely in line with the rest of his philosophy.
I want to hear about this because I imagine his parenting style isn't exactly gentle. He believes boys and girls need fundamentally different parenting, right?
Completely different. For boys, he preaches intense, tough love. He shares a story about his 7-year-old son coming home from school with a black eye.
A 7-year-old?
Yes. When the author found out his son got punched because he stole another kid's pencil case, the author's reaction was essentially, well, serves you right.
No sympathy at all?
None. He felt the son completely deserved the punch to learn that there are hard boundaries in the physical world. He contrasts his calm, approving reaction with the boy's mother, who became completely hysterical and wanted to complain to the school.
The author even laughed when he got called in by a social worker over it. He genuinely believes boys need to experience physical hardship, get bruised, and learn to punch back, or society will just produce weak men who can't protect anyone.
Conversely, he advises fathers to take a remarkably different approach with their daughters. He says daughters should be slightly indulged and deeply emotionally invested in by their fathers.
Why the difference?
Because the father is the very first man she will ever know. By treating her exceptionally well, he sets her baseline standards for how future men should treat her. If a father is always harsh or absent, she might grow up to accept a harsh, abusive husband.
It's all about intentionality. Every single action has a distinct purpose in his worldview, which really transitions us into the final and maybe most surprising chapter of the text.
The spiritual aspect.
Yes. After outlining all these intense rules about fast cars, street fighting, building wealth, and managing multiple wives, Bruyns pivots. He argues that absolutely none of it matters if you don't have a deeper spiritual purpose. He states that ultimate meaning only comes from serving God.
He argues that without a divine origin story, without deep gratitude to a creator, a man will simply fall into nihilism and hedonism. You can build the perfect traditional life, you can be the ultimate protector, but if you don't acknowledge divine accountability, it's just an empty shell.
And his personal journey to this realization is a fascinating paradox. He talks about how, when he was younger, he practiced extreme asceticism.
For those who might not be familiar with the term, asceticism is the practice of severe self-discipline and abstention from all forms of indulgence, usually for religious reasons.
Right. So he fasted constantly, denied himself all worldly pleasures, and actively made himself practically asexual to focus purely on God. He says no man ever viewed him as a threat back then because he refused to even flirt or engage with the world.
But then he shifted.
Entirely. Eventually, he realized that true spirituality wasn't about running away from the world. He started enjoying fast cars, making money, eating well, and engaging fully in his marriages. But the key, he says, is that he learned to enjoy those worldly pleasures while keeping his heart entirely unattached to them.
That's a difficult balance to strike.
For sure. He says the ultimate devotion belongs only to God, not to the shiny toys of the material world.
It is a worldview that attempts to fuse unapologetic biological determinism with strict religious devotion. He views the material world as something to be conquered, ordered, and managed by masculine energy, but ultimately transcended through deep spiritual detachment.
So what does this all mean? We've just taken a deep dive through a remarkably uncompromising text. We've explored a worldview that treats gender differences not as social constructs we can play with, but as absolute, unyielding biological imperatives. It's a text that advocates for men to reclaim their evolutionary hardwiring by returning to strict, patriarchal family structures, embracing physical grit, demanding female submission, and ultimately anchoring it all in spiritual detachment from the very material world they are trying to conquer.
And as we stated at the beginning, our goal was to map this complex territory for you. Whether you find this text profoundly resonant and a much-needed course correction for society, or whether you find it entirely objectionable, archaic, and deeply flawed, understanding it is absolutely key.
Absolutely.
This isn't just one man's isolated opinion echoing in a void. It reflects a very real, very passionate, and rapidly growing faction of modern cultural discourse. It is a direct, forceful reaction to the postmodern world we live in.
It really challenges you to completely rethink the foundations of why society is structured the way it is today, even if you fundamentally disagree with his conclusions.
Which leaves us with a final, rather profound question for you to ponder long after we wrap up today.
Let's hear it.
This raises an important question. If human behavior is truly as rigidly defined by millions of years of biological evolution as this author claims, if we are genuinely just acting out primordial scripts, how do we account for the massive voluntary shifts in social and gender structures we've seen over just the last century?
That is the big question.
Are we forever bound by our evolutionary blueprints? Or is the defining unique trait of humanity our ability to consciously rewrite them?
A huge thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive. We covered a lot of intense, heavy ground today, and we hope it gave you some valuable perspective on the currents shaping our world right now. Keep questioning everything, keep learning, and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.